All right.
Ian in Tampa, Florida.
Hello.
Hi, Ian. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good.
I'm an atheist personally, but I used to be like heavily involved in a Christian church, and I still have a lot of like friends from there and stuff, and we have like friendly banters and stuff like that. And they're like super into like William Lane Craig and all those famous apologists and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just calling you guys to get your opinion on like some of the stuff they're always saying. Basically, what they're always claiming is that people like Richard Dawkins and Sam Harris and people like that are always putting like empirical evidence on like a pedestal, and I guess they're always putting down philosophy and things like that, and they're always claiming that philosophical evidence and like logical equations and things like that actually should be higher than empirical evidence. And I was just kind of calling to get your guys' opinion on that.
I think if they had any empirical evidence to back up their beliefs, they would not be saying that.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, you think about it. I mean, what do they have? They have especially William Lane Craig. He's got a philosophical argument. That's it.
Right.
What does he have?
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Right.
They're always, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, so many of the arguments for God, they boil down to sort of mental masturbation in a vacuum. Because if they said, if they had something where it was like, oh, there was this cliff and written on it in ink, and before this person's eyes, and there's a videotape to corroborate it, the words, I am the Lord thy God, appeared in a pillar of fire. I mean, if that sort of thing happened, they'd be yelling. That would be the first thing they came to you with.
Right.
But instead they come up with this stuff like, the argument from design and, look at the trees, how can you not see the hand of God in that stuff?
And one of the things that William Lane Craig is known for is this idea of this self-authenticating witness of the Holy Spirit.
Right.
So I don't know if you're familiar with that particular apologetic, but...
No, I don't really follow him all that much.
Okay, so basically someone, I think it may have been John Loftus, posed a question to William Lane Craig that if you could go back in time to the tomb where Jesus was allegedly placed, and you go in there and you find out that he didn't resurrect, that there's a body there, and that you could verify that it was, the guy everybody was calling Jesus, that he was dead, he didn't resurrect. Mm-hmm. Would you then believe it? And he said no, because of the self-authenticating witness of the Holy Spirit. Because in his thing is the Holy Spirit is telling him that this is real, and therefore no empirical evidence is enough for him to reject his beliefs.
That's just illusion.
Right.
And so it's like, okay, that's impenetrable. I can't do anything about that.
Yeah.
Right. And one of the questions that I like to ask to people who take this line of argument is, look, there's hundreds of other religions besides Christianity that also rely on these philosophical arguments. Why don't you believe in any of them? Why would you reject Mormonism and their golden tablets? Why would you reject that Muhammad had a divine revelation of some sort? What makes you so sure that this philosophical stuff doesn't lead you to these other religions? Because if you don't have empirical evidence to actually tell the difference between all these things that you want to believe based on pure philosophy, you're just down to an arbitrary choice.
Right. Yeah, it makes sense. I just have one more question for you guys. I'll try to make it really quick.
Okay.
Basically, one of the other things that they always claim is that, I personally believe that we're constantly, everything is aimed at survival. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that, we as a species are always aimed at survival. Everything we do is aimed to survive and be, the best, the highest species in the animal kingdom and things like that. But
surviving and reproducing, don't forget that part. That's important. Because, you could be the strongest, fastest thing in the world, but if you're born with no reproductive organs, then, you don't get to pass that on. Yeah,
okay, yeah. And then what they say is if everything's aimed at survival, then how can we trust that anything we find is true? Because it's not going to be necessarily true or intellectually honest to like reality, but it'll just be aimed at what we see fit to survive. Like, does that make any sense?
Yeah, I don't understand the question.
Like, we can't trust anything we find. Like, we can't trust anything that we find, like any scientific finding, because it's just going to be aimed at survival. Like, there's not going to be any truth to it. It could be...
how do they trust their religion then?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it just goes back to the whole God.
Yeah, I mean, you know, these are valid philosophical questions. I mean, there's a whole branch of philosophy known as epistemology, which covers questions like, how do we know stuff? And, you know, that's worth reading about, certainly. But what religious people do when they raise these questions is not try to look for answers, but to try to set their personal pet religious beliefs aside into a special magical category where they say you can question everything but not this.
Right.
And then once they've done that cheat with their own religious beliefs, then they can say, well, our religious beliefs, since I've exempted them from these questions, are the only ones left. So in general, it's a good technique to think about those same questions and see if you can flip them back around on the assumptions that the questioner has.
Yeah, great. Yeah, that makes total sense. Well, thank you guys. Like, I really appreciate everything you guys do, and I love the show.
All right.
So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.